They crossed 900 light-years to catalog Earth. Their scanners found one creature that broke every rule they had. It ate poison. It slept through almost everything. It roared like something 20 times its size, so the invasion fleet did not attack it. The fleet knelt to it, and then the fire came. If you are enjoying stories like this one, take 1 second and hit that like button, and please subscribe. Your support is helping us reach our very first 1,000 subscribers, and it genuinely matters. Drop a comment too, and tell me what you think that strange little creature actually did. I read every single one. Now let us move forward together into the strangest rescue mission ever attempted on this planet. Kellerman Ridge sat at the dry end of a valley where the eucalyptus grew so thick that the air itself smelled faintly of medicine. Blue gum, manna gum, and swamp gum crowded the slopes in silver ranks. And on a hot afternoon, the oil in their leaves lifted off the canopy as a thin haze that turned the sunlight the color of weak tea. The Kellerman Ridge Wildlife Recovery Station was 5 buildings, 1 water tank, and a very long gravel driveway. It was staffed by 5 Americans who had all arrived for different reasons and stayed for the same one. Dr. Wesley Carter ran it. He was 54, originally from Bozeman, Montana, and he had the permanent squint of a man who had spent 30 years looking at animals in bad light. He did not raise his voice. He had never needed to. Marla Jennings was the head keeper. She was from Ohio. She said exactly what she thought, and she could tell a koala's mood from 40 feet away by the angle of its ears. Hank Delaney had been a fire captain in Sacramento for 22 years before he retired, got bored in 8 months, and volunteered his way to the other side of the world. He drove the station's water tanker, and he checked the weather 3 times a day, every day, without ever being asked. Tommy Brooks was 24, from outside Amarillo, Texas, and he talked the way a leaking faucet drips, constantly and with no idea he was doing it. And Ruth Ann Whitaker was 71, from Georgia, and she sewed. Cotton pouches for orphan Joeys, soft mittens for burned paws. She had a folding table under the veranda, a sewing machine older than Tommy, and a stack of finished mittens that never got any smaller because she never stopped. At the center of all of it was a koala named Butterball. Butterball was a big male, close to 30 pounds, with a torn left ear and a face like a disappointed bank manager. He had come in years earlier after a collision with a car, and a badly set shoulder meant he could never be released. He lived in the largest enclosure, ate his weight in fresh leaf every week, slept about 20 hours a day, and once a night, usually around 2 in the morning, he bellowed. That bellow was the reason nobody knew ever slept through their first week. "It is not fair," Tommy said one evening, watching Butterball scratch his stomach with the slow dignity of a creature who had never once been in a hurry. "He weighs less than my dog. How does he make a sound like a diesel engine falling down a staircase?" Weeze did not look up from his clipboard. "Extra set of vocal folds, sits back in his throat behind the normal ones. Almost nothing else on Earth has that. It lets him drop the pitch about 20 times lower than an animal his size should be able to manage. Why? So other males think he is bigger than he is." Weeze finally looked up. "It works. On everything." That night, the sky did something it had never done before. Hank saw it first, because Hank was always the one outside at 11 at night checking the wind. A single point of light in the northern sky stopped moving. It did not blink like a satellite, and it did not drift like a plane. It simply stopped, and then it grew. By midnight, every phone in the valley had lost signal. By 1 in the morning, a shape hung over the ridge that was longer than the ridge itself. It made no sound. It cast no shadow, because it did not seem to reflect anything at all. It was simply an absence in the stars, shaped like a shallow blade, and the only way to measure it was to notice how many constellations had gone missing. 900 light-years away, that shape had a name. Aboard it, so did the man in charge. Overseer Val Dreeken of the Vesari Compact stood at the survey rail with his hands folded behind his back and waited for the numbers. The Vesari did not conquer worlds. That was a crude word, and Dreeken disliked crude words. The Vesari surveyed worlds, identified the apex organism on each one, and then made an offer to that apex. Serve or be served. In 411 surveys, the answer had always been the same, because the apex organism of a world is always the one holding the weapons. It was a clean doctrine. It had never failed. Atmospheric survey complete, said Tethmar, the scan officer. Landmass designation South Continental. Biosphere is dense. Running the threat ladder now. Dreeken nodded. This was the easy part. The scanners would find the tool users, the ones with the metal and the fire, and the ladder would place them at the top, and then the offer would be made. Surin Ott, the analyst, leaned toward the readout, then leaned closer, then stopped breathing for a moment, which for a Vesari is a very serious gesture. Overseer, Ott said carefully. The ladder has resolved. Then read it. The bipedal tool users are ranked 41st. Dreeken turned his head slowly. 41st? Yes, Overseer. Out of how many? Out of 41. There was a silence on the survey deck of the kind that usually precedes someone being reassigned to a moon. Then who, Dreeken said, is first? Ott brought the image up on the survey rail. A gray, round, unhurried creature sat wedged in the fork of a tree, one arm draped over a branch, eyes half closed, chewing. That is first, Ott said. Dreeken stared at it for a long moment. It appears to be asleep. It is, Overseer. Then wake it up and be extremely careful. The Vesari were not stupid. That is the important thing to understand. Everything they concluded from real data, gathered by instruments that had never once been wrong. Every single reading was accurate. The problem was that Earth is a planet where accurate readings can still get you into an enormous amount of trouble. Surin Ott walked the Overseer through it line by line, and with every line, Dreeken's expression got worse. Begin with diet, Ott said. The organism feeds exclusively on the foliage of a single genus of tree. We ran the leaf composition. Overseer, that foliage contains terpenes, phenolic compounds, and cyanogenic glycosides. Under compact classification, that leaf is not food. It is a chemical deterrent. We would classify it as a weapon. And it eats it. It eats nothing else. It has evolved a digestive organ over 2 meters long, packed with bacteria that break the toxins apart. It has been drinking poison for so long that it has forgotten there was ever an alternative. Dreeken absorbed this. Continue. Metabolic cycle. The organism is inactive between 18 and 22 hours per day. It sleeps. Overseer, we do not know that it sleeps. We know that it stops. There is a difference. Ott's crest flattened. Doctrine says an organism that spends 90% of its existence motionless is either dying, or it is conserving for something. It is not dying. Its condition is excellent. So what is it conserving for? That is the question that is keeping the whole analysis deck awake. Tethmar spoke up from the scan station. Overseer, the habitat reading is worse. The tree the organism lives in produces a volatile oil. Under sufficient heat, that oil vaporizes and combusts. In extreme conditions, the entire canopy can ignite at once. Dreeken's hands tightened behind his back. You are telling me it nests inside an incendiary device. It nests inside a forest of them. And it has done so for millions of cycles. It does not appear to consider this a problem. Neural scan, Dreeken said. Give me the neural scan. I want to know what it is thinking. Ott hesitated. We cannot read it. Why not? Because there is nothing to read. Overseer, the organism's brain is smooth. No folding, no convolution. It occupies only a portion of the available cranial volume. Our neural mapping array is built to detect pattern, and there is no pattern to detect. Ott spread all 4 hands. By every standard we have, that skull is opaque to us. It is shielded. Shielded, Dreeken repeated. We cannot scan it, we cannot predict it, and we cannot influence it. And then came the part that broke the room. Identity signature, Ott said quietly. Overseer, we ran the ridge patterns on the organism's 4-limb digits, standard procedure to log it as a distinct species. The pattern came back as a match to the tool users. A similar match. No, Overseer, a match. Loops, whorls, arches, ridge density, all of it. We ran it 4 times. Our forensic index cannot reliably tell the 2 species apart. Dreeken sat down. Vesari commanders do not sit down. You are telling me, he said slowly, that the creature at the top of this world's ladder shares its identity signature with the creature at the bottom of it. Yes. Then they are not separate species. They are one lineage, one rules. One serves. That is the only reading that fits, Overseer. And then Tethmar, who had been silent for a while, said the thing that put an end to any remaining debate. Overseer. Bioacoustic capture, recorded 90 minutes ago at the site we have been observing. He played it. It rolled through the survey deck like something being dragged out of the ground. It started as a long, ragged inhale, went down into a grinding, guttural roar, and finished in a series of low, wet snarls. It did not sound like an animal. It sounded like a structural failure. Every Vesari on the deck instinctively took one step back. "Mass estimate," Dreeken said. His voice had gone very flat. "Our acoustic model puts the source organism at a minimum of 4,000 kilograms. And the observed mass of the creature," Mars swallowed, 13 kilograms. Dreeken stood back up. "So," he said, "it survives on poison. It rests for 90% of its life. It sleeps inside a bomb. Its mind cannot be read. It shares a bloodline with the species that serves it. And when it opens its mouth, it produces a sound belonging to something 300 times its size." "Yes, Overseer. And there are how many of them on this continent?" Ott checked. "Estimates vary, perhaps a few 100,000. The survey deck was completely silent. "Adjust the mission profile," Dreeken said. "We are not conducting an acquisition. We are requesting an audience." Down on Kellerman Ridge, Wheeze Carter had been up all night watching the shape in the sky and getting absolutely nowhere on the radio. "Anything?" Marla asked, handing him coffee at dawn. "Static, all bands." He rubbed his eyes. "Whatever that thing is, it is not talking to us." Tommy came around the corner at a jog. Doc. "There is a light coming down." They went out onto the gravel and looked up. A single small craft had detached from the impossible shape above and was descending, slowly, deliberately, in a wide, unhurried spiral. It was not coming toward the buildings. It was coming toward Butterball's enclosure. The craft settled on the flat ground beside the enclosure without kicking up a single stone. It simply arrived the way a thought arrives. Wheeze put an arm out and stopped Tommy from moving. "Everybody stays still, hands where they can be seen, nobody runs." A ramp lowered, 3 figures came down it. They were tall, close to 8 feet, and long in the limb, with dark segmented plating and 4 arms folded in a posture that read, unmistakably, as formal. The one in front carried a shallow, black case in his lower hands, held out in front of him at chest height, the way you carry something you are afraid to drop. Marla let out a very quiet breath. "Wheeze, I see them." The lead figure walked past all 5 humans without so much as a glance. He walked directly to the enclosure mesh, stopped, and looked in. Butterball was asleep in the fork of his favorite branch, wedged so comfortably that gravity had apparently given up on him. One arm hung down. His mouth was slightly open. He was snoring in short, thoughtful bursts. Overseer Valdreeken lowered himself onto one knee. "There it is," Tommy whispered. "There it is, Doc." There is an alien kneeling to Butterball. "Tommy, sorry." Dreeken touched a device at his collar, and when he spoke, the words came out in flat, careful English. "Apex of this world. The Vesari Compact greets you. We have come 900 light years. We ask for terms." Butterball did not move. Dreeken waited a full minute. Then he opened the black case and set it on the ground. Inside was a bar of what looked like polished blue glass. "We offer tribute, refined heavy elements. Sufficient to purchase a small moon." Butterball opened one eye, looked at the bar of moon money, decided it was not a leaf, and closed the eye again. Ott, standing behind the Overseer, said in a hushed voice, "Overseer, it has declined. I can see that it has declined." Butterball shifted his weight, extended one back leg, and scratched his stomach for 11 straight seconds, with an expression of profound and unhurried satisfaction. Dreeken did not move a muscle. "Analyst, log the gesture." "Logging, Overseer." "Interpretation, dismissal," Ott said. "Possibly contempt." At this point, Wheeze Carter, who had spent 30 years dealing with creatures that could not be reasoned with, decided to try reasoning with one that could. "Excuse me," he said. The 3 Vesari turned as one. It was like being noticed by a building. "Sir," Wheeze said, "I think there has been a mistake. That is a koala. He is a marsupial. He is not in charge of anything. He is not in charge of himself. He fell out of that tree twice last month." Dreeken studied him for a long moment. Then he said with real gentleness, "You are the senior attendant. I am the veterinarian. Yes. Your rank is noted, and it is respected." Dreeken glanced past him toward the veranda, where Ruth Ann's table sat with its stack of tiny cotton mittens. "You harvest the poison leaf and carry it to them. You construct garments for their limbs. You lift them. You carry them against your chest as one carries a superior. You surrender your rest to monitor them at night. He inclined his head. The compact does not mock service. Service is how a ladder holds. Marla put her hands on her hips. So in your book, the guy who cleans up after the animal works for the animal. Yes, well, she said, okay. That is not even wrong, exactly. Ruth Ann, who had not said a single word this entire time, walked slowly up to the mesh with a fresh mitten in her hand. She held it out toward the enormous kneeling figure. Honey, she said, if you are going to kneel out here all day, you may as well be useful. Hold this. Dreeken took the mitten in one enormous hand. He looked at it. It was 5 inches long, made of soft cotton, sewn with a doubled seam so it would not chafe. What is the function? He asked. It goes on a burned paw, Ruth Ann said, so the dressing stays put so it does not hurt them so much. Dreeken turned it over twice. You made this? I made 400 of them. For what payment? Ruth Ann laughed once quietly. Sweetheart, they are koalas. What exactly do you think they are going to pay me with? And for the first time since the Vesari Compact had begun surveying worlds, the answer to a direct question did not fit in the log. Dreeken stood up slowly and handed the mitten back. Analyst, he said, flag that response. I want it reviewed by the Doctrine Board. Then Hank Delaney came around the corner of the shed at a dead run, holding his weather radio, and his face had gone the color of ash. Wheeze, everyone turned. Dry lightning north of the ridge, 2 strikes confirmed, wind is out of the northwest at 30 and building. Hank swallowed. It is already up in the canopy. Wheeze, it is moving toward us. Wheeze Carter looked north, and above the tree line, a smudge of brown had begun to lean sideways across the sky. Dreeken watched the smoke, and then watched the human faces, and something in the overseer's posture changed completely. Attendant, he said. Explain what is happening. Wheeze did not take his eyes off the ridge. Fire, he said, in a forest full of oil. And there are about 400 koalas up in those trees. Then we will remove them. You cannot. I command a vessel 11 kilometers long. Wheeze finally looked at him. I know, he said. And it will not help you at all, because when a fire comes, a koala does not run. A koala climbs higher, curls into a ball, and holds on. And there is nothing in this universe that can talk it out of that. The station went to work in 90 seconds, because they had drilled this 100 times. Hank had the tanker running. Marla was pulling every transport crate off the shelves. Tommy was soaking blankets. Ruth Ann was filling a laundry basket with mittens and gauze. Wheeze was on the map table, marking the 3 gullies where the density of animals was highest. And 3 members of the Vesari Compact stood in the middle of it all, being completely useless, which was a new experience for all of them. Overseer, Ott said. Options, give me options. We can deploy a suppression field over the affected sector. It will extinguish combustion in under a minute. Wheeze did not look up from the map. How? It removes the oxidizer from the atmospheric column. Then it kills everything under it, Wheeze said. You would put out my fire and take my forest's air with it. Every animal in that sector suffocates. No, Ott recalculated. Tractor retrieval. We can lift each organism directly out of the canopy. With what, a beam? Yes. Dr. Carter is right to hesitate, Marla said, shoving a crate into the truck bed. You ever try to take a koala off a branch it does not want to leave? Those claws are built for one job. They hook into bark and they lock. You pull hard enough to break that grip, you are pulling the animal apart, and they will not let go. They will hold on until the branch does. Then we remove the trees, Dreeken said. We cut the affected canopy and lower it to safe ground. Wheeze finally straightened up. You cut a tree with a koala in it, the koala rides it down and gets crushed, and there are thousands of trees. You do not have the time. How much time do I have? Hank checked the radio. Front hits the North Gully in about 40 minutes. Everything after that goes fast. Dreeken stood absolutely still for a moment. When he spoke again, his voice had lost every trace of ceremony. Attendant. I have 11 kilometers of vessel, a crew of 9,000, and enough energy in my primary reservoir to move a small mountain. And you are telling me none of it is worth anything here? Yes. Why? Because the problem is not the fire, Wheeze tapped the map. The problem is a decision. Every koala in that valley is going to make the same choice in the next 40 minutes. Go up and hold on, and it is not stupidity. It is a good instinct. It works for almost every threat these animals have ever faced in their entire evolutionary history. Predators cannot follow you to the top of a gum tree. It is the right answer to every question except this one. Dreeken looked north at the leaning smoke. Then we must change the decision. Yes, how does one change the mind of an organism whose mind cannot be scanned? And wheezed Carter, who had been circling something in the back of his head for the last 10 minutes, went very quiet. Say that again? How does one change the mind of a creature we cannot read? No, before that, what did your people say about the sound? Tethmar answered. The bioacoustic capture. Our model placed the source at 4,000 kilograms. Say the number again, 4,000 kilograms. Weez turned around slowly and looked at Butterball's enclosure. Marla, he said. Get me the night recordings, all of them. Marla stared at him, then her mouth opened. Oh, you have got to be kidding me. What? Tommy said. What is happening? Somebody tell me what is happening. Weez was already moving. Tommy, a koala will not come down for fire. A koala will not come down for smoke, or for people, or for helicopters, or for anything else we have ever tried, because none of those things register as a reason. But there is exactly one sound in this world that will make a koala get up, get down, and move, and it will do it in breeding season with no hesitation whatsoever. Hank got there first. Another male, we said, a big one bigger than him, bellowing from a direction he did not expect. It is the one signal these animals cannot ignore, because ignoring it is how you lose your territory and your whole line. It overrides everything. It even overrides comfort, and comfort is a koala's entire personality. Dreeken had gone very still. You wish to broadcast a challenge. I wish to broadcast the biggest, meanest, most obnoxious male koala that has ever existed, we said. And I want it coming from the south, past the firebreak, from safe ground. So that every male in that valley climbs down and marches toward it to start a fight he is never going to get. And the females, Ott said, and the young, they move where the noise moves. And where the smoke pushes them. If we get the males walking south, we get most of the valley walking south. Weez exhaled. It is not a certainty, I want to be honest about that. Nobody has ever tried this, but it is the only lever I have ever seen that these animals actually respond to. Dreeken's 4 hands slowly unfolded. You are asking the Vesari Compact, he said, to imitate a koala. I am asking you to imitate one very loudly, with a vessel designed for orbital survey, with whatever you have got. The overseer turned to his scan officer. Mar, our low-frequency projection array, what is its floor? Mar's crest went up. Overseer, the array was calibrated 3 days ago. We recalibrated it specifically to reproduce and analyze the acoustic capture. He looked almost frightened. It is already tuned. It is tuned to that exact sound. There was a beat of silence. The thing that frightened us, Dreeken said slowly, is the thing that is going to save them. He turned back to Weez Carter. Attendant. Give me the voice. Butterball was not thrilled about being woken up at 4 in the afternoon. He was even less thrilled about the folding chair Marla dragged into his enclosure, the microphone rigged Tommy assembled beside it. Or the fact that 5 humans and 3 enormous plated visitors were now standing around watching him with the intensity of a jury. He will not do it, Marla said. He bellows at 2 in the morning, he bellows when he feels like it, he does not perform. Then we use the archive, we said. Tommy, what have we got? 900 hours of night audio, Doc. He is on most of it. He is loud on about 40 of them. Pull the best one. The angriest one. On it. Mar took the file, and 40 seconds later a Vesari acoustic model of Butterball's bellow existed inside an alien warship. Ott ran it against the model of a challenging male, corrected the harmonics, and stretched the source mass upward. Overseer, Ott reported. Synthesis complete. Projected apparent mass of the broadcast organism, 9,000 kilograms. Dreeken frowned. That is more than double our original reading of the natural specimen. Yes, Overseer, Dr. Carter. Is bigger better? And we said the sentence that would eventually be carved into a plaque on the veranda. No, bigger is worse. Make him plausible or they will not believe him. Ott pulled the number back down. 4,200. A rival, not a god. They set the projection point 2 kilometers south, past the cleared fire break, in open grazing land where Hank's tanker could reach anything that went wrong. Then Dreeken gave the order and the Vesari compact bellowed. It came out of the southern sky and rolled up the valley like weather, the long, ragged inhale, the grinding, wet, furious roar. The trailing snarls at the end, each one a little more insulting than the last. Every window in the station buzzed in its frame. Tommy sat down involuntarily. A flock of cockatoos left the district entirely and did not come back for 2 days. And in the North Gully, 400 koalas kept climbing. Nothing, Marla said, watching through the spotting scope. Her voice was tight. Wheeze, they are still going up. Why? Dreeken demanded. The synthesis was exact. Ruth Ann Whittaker, who had been standing quietly at the veranda rail with a laundry basket on her hip, said, because he is coming from the wrong place. Honey, everyone turned. I have listened to that boy holler every night for 6 years, she said, nodding at Butterball. He does not just make a noise, he makes it from somewhere. He gets low in the fork, he points his face down the slope, and the whole valley bounces it back at you. Your fellow up there is shouting from the middle of a field. He sounds like he is standing in a parking lot, she sniffed. No self-respecting male is going to walk 2 miles to fight a koala who does not even know where to stand. Dreeken stared at her. Analyst, he said, reposition the array. Project from within the southern tree line, angled downslope, and let the terrain carry it. Overseer. The reflection modeling for that is extremely complex. You have a computational core the size of a city. She has a sewing machine. She got there first. Move. 90 seconds later, they tried again. This time the sound did not come from the sky. It came out of the trees, low and close and wrong, bouncing off the southern ridge and folding back into the gully so that it seemed to be coming from everywhere at once, the way a real one does. For 4 long seconds, nothing happened. Then Marla whispered, wheeze. In the scope, a large male in the third tree along had stopped climbing. He turned his head. He looked south. His ears rotated forward, and then, with enormous reluctance and total commitment, he began to climb down. He is coming down, Marla said. Wheeze, he is coming down. The second one went at 11 seconds. The fourth and fifth went together. By the 2-minute mark, the North Gully was moving, and it was moving south, and it was the single most ridiculous and most beautiful thing any human being on that ridge had ever witnessed. 400 koalas walking. Koalas do not walk well. They were built for branches, not ground. They went in a rolling, bandy-legged, deeply offended waddle, every one of them radiating the specific fury of a creature that has been personally insulted and intends to do something about it. They are furious, Tommy said, half laughing, half something else. Doc, they are so angry. Good, we said. Angry moves. Scared holds on. Hank ran the tanker along the fire break, laying a wet line. Marla and Tommy worked the edges with crates, pulling out the slow ones, the old ones, the mothers with Joeys clamped to their backs. Ruth Ann sat on the tailgate with her basket and her gauze and her tiny cotton mittens, and she worked on every singed paw that came to her, one after another, talking to each animal the entire time. The Vesari did not touch a single koala. Doctrine forbade it, and by then nobody needed them to. At 41 minutes, the fire came over the North Ridge. The gully went up the way an oil-soaked forest goes up, all at once, a wall of orange that lit the underside of the smoke for miles. The heat hit the fire break like a door slamming. And 2 kilometers south, on the wet side of that break, 406 koalas stood in a field of dry grass, in the dark, in the middle of a paddock, absolutely seething. Looking around for the enormous rival who had called them all out, and then failed to show up. Overseer Val Dreeken looked at the burning ridge, and then at the field of extremely irritated marsupials, and then at the 5 exhausted humans sitting on the tailgate of a water truck. Analyst, he said quietly, are we certain we got them all? And nobody could answer because nobody knew yet. They found out at first light. Wheeze, Marla, Hank, and Tommy walked the burn edge for 6 hours with clipboards and crates, while the ground was still too hot to stand on in one place for long. The Vesari ran a thermal sweep of the entire valley from orbit and cross-checked it 3 times. The final count came in at 411 koalas moved, and 11 treated for burns to the paws, all of them expected to recover fully. 9 did not come down. They were found in the western spur, in a stand of trees the fire had run past instead of through, which happened sometimes, because fire is not a decision either. Tommy sat down on a stump when he heard the number and did not say anything for a solid minute, which for Tommy was practically a religious event. Ruth Ann used every mitten she had. 2 days later, Overseer Valdrekin came back down. He found Wes Carter on the veranda with a mug of coffee and a face like a man who had slept 4 hours in 3 days. "Dr. Carter, Overseer," Drekin lowered himself onto the step, which put his head roughly level with Wes. "I have a question. My doctrine board has instructed me not to leave this planet until I have the answer." "Go ahead. What is the payment?" Wes blinked. "The payment? The compact has surveyed 411 worlds. On every one the latter holds because service is purchased. The strong protect the weak and the weak provide. Labor. Resources, loyalty, something." Drekin's 4 hands rested on his knees. "I have reviewed your station's records. You take nothing from these animals. They do not work. They do not fight. They do not produce. They cannot even be persuaded to come down out of a tree. You spend your money, your years, and your sleep on a creature that will never give you one thing in return, and when the fire came, every one of you ran toward it." He paused. "So I am asking formally, and for the record, what do they pay you?" Wes looked out at the black ridge and the green valley below it and thought about it properly, because it deserved a proper answer. "Nothing," he said. "That is the whole point. Explain. We did not save them because they are useful. We saved them because they cannot save themselves, and we happen to be standing here." Wes turned his mug in his hands. "You have got a ladder. Fine. Ours does not work like that. On our world, the measure of a thing is not what it can do to you. It is what happens to it when it cannot do anything at all." Drekin was silent for a long time. "That is not a ladder," he said finally. "No, that is the opposite of a ladder." "Yeah," we said, "it is a bad system if you want to run an empire. It is a pretty good system if you want to live somewhere." The Vesari Compact filed its report 6 days later. It ran to 14,000 pages. The summary was 4 lines, and it is still quoted at Compact academies, usually with the lights slightly dimmed. Subject world is not governable by ladder doctrine. The apex organism does not rule. It sleeps. The servant caste is not a servant caste. It chose the thing that could not fight back, and then it ran into a fire for it. Recommendation: open relations. Do not attempt acquisition. Do not, under any circumstances, wake the gray one. Before they left, the Vesari did one more thing, and they did it without being asked. They left the array behind. It sits on a tower on the southern ridge now, solar-fed, low and unglamorous, and it is tied into the regional fire service network. When a front is confirmed and the wind is wrong, it wakes up, angles downslope, and it bellows. The service calls it the Southern Caller. The station calls it Butterball's voice, because that is exactly what it is, cleaned up and stretched a little and thrown 2 kilometers. It has been used 9 times. It has moved a little over 2,000 koalas out of the path of a fire, and it has never once failed. Because the thing about instinct is that it does not get tired, and it does not stop believing you. Butterball, for the record, has no idea. He is still in the big enclosure. He still has the torn ear. He still bellows at 2 in the morning, and every time he does, Tommy Brooks wakes up and says the same thing into his pillow. That is the loudest thing in the galaxy, and it does not even know it saved anybody. So that is the strangest trick ever used to save a species. Not a weapon, not a shield. Not 9,000 crew, or 11 kilometers of starship. An alien empire that came here to find out who was in charge, learned it had been wrong about everything, and then leaned out over a burning valley and did a koala impression. And it worked, because a koala will run from nothing on Earth except the sound of a bigger koala who is looking for a fight. Here is the part that stays with me. Every single thing the Vesari got wrong, they got wrong from real data. The toxic leaf, the 20 hours of sleep, the smooth brain, the fingerprints you cannot tell from a human's, the bellow that belongs to something 300 times the size. Every one of those is true. Look them up. This planet is genuinely strange, and we walk past most of it without noticing, and maybe that is the actual lesson. The aliens spent 400 worlds asking who was strongest. It took them 1 afternoon on a burning ridge to work out that it was the wrong question the whole time. Now I want to hear from you. Drop a comment and tell me this. If a survey fleet scanned your part of the world tomorrow, which animal do you think their instruments would wrongly put at the top of the ladder, and why? I want the weirdest, most convincing answer you have got. And if this story made you smile, please share it with one person who needs a good one today. That single share does more for this channel than anything else, and it helps these stories find the people who love them. Thank you for staying to the end. I will see you in the next one.